Welcome back to Breakfast Central. It's time to review the newspapers, and we're joined this morning by public affairs analyst Chima Christian. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now let's get into the papers. We begin with the Punch newspaper this morning. On the front page of the Punch, October 1st protest record low turnout nationwide. Kaduna, Plateau, Nasarawa, others shun rally. Heavy police presence in Osun and Niger. Police arrest 10 in Kano. Port Harcourt as Nans back president's youth confab. Tinubu governors preach patriotism at 64th Independence Day parades. Federal government extends rice subsidy program to states. 5 suspects arrested for allegedly killing Ogun fisherman. Iran launches 180 missiles at Israel. Federal government plans Nigerians' evacuation. Flooding worsens despite 180 billion naira spent on dams. Port Harcourt refinery misses 7th production rollout deadline as expected. Dauda Lawal's allegations against Matawale self-serving, says analyst. And final story, petrol imports dropped by 3.58 billion liters after subsidy removal, according to the federal government. Let's move on to the next paper.
The Vanguard newspaper's up next. It says here, fearless in October protest, soldiers and police crack down on protesters in Rivers, Abuja and Kano. Arrest 5 leaders in Kano. Stop media coverage of protests in Rivers. Panic in Abuja's police tear gas protesters. Of course, Showere leads peaceful demonstration in Lagos. Also on the Vanguard, Independence Anniversary, Nigeria at risk of dictatorship, says Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi. We can also find here NNPCL allocates 48.6 million barrels of crude to Dangote refinery. Tinubu failed to address Nigerians' problems, and that's in his Independence Day speech, say CSOs. I didn't steal Kaduna's money. Can swear with Quran, says ex-governor El Rufai. That's very interesting. I think these are the major stories that we can share on the Vanguard. We have time for just one more newspaper. Yes,
and the Daily Independent is our final paper this morning. Tinubu draws flag over plan to convoke National Youth Confab. There are many people who have given their reactions. Youth Confab will be useless. Implement 2040 National Confab, MBF says. We'll come back to that conversation much later. Police explain deployment of officers to RSIEC headquarters. Federal government distributes 2,000 CNG-powered tricycles to youths. My government won't surrender to barefaced blackmail, says Fubara. Emirates resumes operations in Nigeria 2 years after suspension. Interesting. I'm hoping that this would mean that the visa ban is also officially lifted. Protesters in Benin, Oshogbo, Akure ask Tinubu to reverse harsh policies. Police suspected miscreants disperse protesters in Rivers. Iran fires dozens of missiles into Israel. Obi tasked Nigerians to end state capture by unpatriotic leaders. And final story, federal government insincerity igniting fresh round of industrial crisis, according to ASU. And your thoughts regarding the National Youth Confab? We're seeing that different people, there's some who say it will be useless. Some, here on the front page, you can see it's designed to divert attention from bad governance. Someone, Shell has says, revisit report of past confab committees, forget youth confab. Sage says, youth must be heard, concerns addressed, but crash PMS prize. And PDP says, speech empty, confirmation of Tinubu's insensitivity. So a general overview of your thoughts on the speech, and more importantly, please narrow it down to your support or disagreement for the National Youth Confab.
Well, thank you so very much for the opportunity. Let me start with the confab. That concerns the young person, and I think that by all definitions, I'm young. I think that if you look at that, the question to ask is whose interest does Tinubu and his government want to serve? If it's the interest of Nigerians and Nigeria's young population, then the confab is a good thing to have. But then if it is to serve the government's interest, then it's a mere waste of time and money. I've sat on panels and on things like this that the government, you see from day one that they're not interested in doing that. Example, when we finished NSAS, some of us were drafted into NSAS panels in our respective states. And from the foregoing, we saw, especially in my home state of Anambra, that the government was insincere. Till today, the government has not even looked at the report, let alone implementing it. So again, Nigeria has had a lot of committees and all of the things like this, and we've not looked at it. So if the government is serious, yes, it's a good place to start, because young people have perspectives quite different from that of the older population, right? But then I think, given all that has happened, that I don't see that Tinubu wants to serve the interest of young people. I see that the only thing he puts ahead of him is himself. And for that, I don't think that the confab will solve any meaningful problem.
What could possibly be serious about gathering young Nigerians for 30 days to have discussions. You know, the guest who just, left, he made a very strong point that the United Nations General Assembly, which is a gathering of, delegates from all around the world, happens for just 5 days and everyone goes home. There's, of course, conferences that, max 3 days. So what is possibly serious about 30 days of youth discussions here in Nigeria?
So the ones I've participated in did not sit for 30 days and we delivered on the mark. And I share that sentiment that, again, you need to see the design of the program. That's where we will see what are they going to achieve, what is the set objectives, how are they going to do this, what are they going to be discussing for 30 days, are they going to be redrawing the map of Nigeria, are they going to be designing, for instance, 1999 constitution, what kind of powers do you confer on that body, how do you make the constitution of that body, what are the parameters, what are they looking at, and then the reports coming out, are you going to distill it to legislative proposals for constitution by national? So those are some of the things you're going to be looking at. But then again, if you look at the meaningful work of redesigning Nigeria and you go into sectoral analysis of the thing, I think it will take a lot of work because if you look at, for instance, elections, you have youth debate and agree on policies. You go into agriculture, so there are things to discuss. Again, pardon my pessimism because I've seen a lot from this government. I don't think they are doing this to serve the interest of young people.
All right, let's talk about young
yes,
people.
Please.
October 1st protest, the Fearless in October protest. Some would call it a spin-off of the End Bad Governance protest or a continuation of the End Bad Governance protest. The Punch reports that there was low turnout. Why do you perceive that there was low turnout? Is it necessarily because people don't believe in the power of protest to effect change? Is it because people are tired? Or is it because they are afraid of being charged for treason? What would you say are your thoughts regarding the protests?
Our culture,
and the low turnout.
Yes, our culture, a learned culture, and that of civic. By the way, my view is that democracy operates a demand and supply pendulum. That if you see supply side guys, for instance, people in government, and then the demand side guys are those of us on the street, the media, and all of those other people, that if you don't demand well, you will not get enough supply. That even anywhere you see democracy working, it operates those two pendulums. The demand of governance must be ahead of supply. But then in Nigeria, we have a laid-back culture where we expect the government to be benevolent. And then the only place you see that benevolence is in dictatorship. I keep telling people, democracy confers on you some rights and privileges, but then it also confers on you automatically some responsibilities. I've not seen that Nigerians are enough in sitting up to those responsibilities. And then we're beginning to see pockets of things around. In 1999, it would be unconscionable to think that Nigerians will pour out in the streets like they've done in NSAS and End Bad Governance yesterday again. But then what I'm seeing is that pressure from the economy, from insecurity, and all of the things are now beginning to remodel Nigeria. Let's allow these things to happen. If the government does not take time, the next one, it might not be the next immediate one, but the one that will really hit at the core of Nigeria will not be televised. It will not be planned. It will be spontaneous. And then that day, we're looking forward to it. And what we advise government is to make it peaceful. But if they don't, Nigerians will get to the point where you can't threaten them with treason charges, where you can't threaten them with, for instance, someone who is dying of hunger and insecurity. What's the need? Either die in the hands of Fulani headsmen or die in the hands of the security operatives. Death is death. So at some point, Nigerians will get tired and get above that fear of death. And when that time comes, you will see that Nigeria does not have enough state structure to contain even 5% of Nigerians if they pour out on the streets.
Yeah, and that's a little scary, just, thinking about it. But let's talk about other things in the news this morning. I didn't steal Kaduna's money, I can swear with the Quran, says ex-governor El-Rufai. Quick reactions to that one.
Well, it's subject to who do you ask for verification, right? So if he feels, let him submit himself to an organized panel that will look into all his dealings with the state government in 8 years. Again, it's not my word against your word. Again, I think he's operating that medieval mindset where he feels that he calls up or invokes a holy book and he gets a pass. I don't think invoking a holy book is enough stewardship of your 8 years. Submit yourself to a panel that can critically look through all your documents. Like P2B would say, everybody go and verify. He's been saying it since he's out of office. Such challenges, and again, you know that panels have been instituted by the House of Assembly in that state. Yes. You know the shenanigans, I don't think he honored their invitation, all of those things. So again, his word against the word of the government. Again, I don't believe him. But then the only thing that I will see is that if he submits himself to an independent probe and he comes out clean, then so be it.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't it telling you that, there could be these panels or these accusations just hovering around and, all he has to, I mean, he's at the liberty to make these type of statements, when we would expect that the institutions in government should immediately be in full force. Nobody needs to tell them to investigate. Nobody needs to tell them to set up panels. Nobody needs to tell, whatever financial regulatory agencies to get into action.
What we are playing is catch-up, and then we don't have the state capacity to play catch-up. How many, EFCC, for instance, how many lawyers, they outsource their cases to private lawyers, and then how many can you outsource? Giving any government in any 8 years to thoroughly investigate them forensically, and then you spread it out across 36, and then you spread it out across the several ministries, departments, agencies, and you pull it down to local government, you take it up to federal government. You can't do this. You can't be playing catch-up. I think that our system is you steal, they allow you to steal, and they try to shake you down if you are not politically connected to see what they can get out of you. I think we have to design a system that makes it practically difficult for governors, office holders, to have the kind of leverage they have on our resources. Those are the things I'm looking forward to. It's not happening now, but again, we can see if we can catch 5 to 10% of the criminals and try to make example out of them, but then the system has to be designed in a way that you can't take money, let alone take in, and we're trying to play catch-up.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's take another story on the front page of the Punch. Very interesting story. I don't think we're quite surprised. Port Harcourt refinery misses 7th production rollout deadline. Is that refinery ever going to roll out?
Ever, yes, because Nigeria has made huge investments in that place. Whether or not they are audio investments, we can't say, but investments have been made. You know about Jonathan's turnaround maintenance. Before him, there was maintenance by Erdogan's government. Before that, there was maintenance by Obasanjo's government. And I think at this point, given the near success, again, we won't say, but given the early signs we are seeing from Dangote's refinery, this is a good time to make the case for the privatization of the existing refineries. Right? Let's privatize them so that that forms a bulwark to compete against what Dangote is doing, and in that healthy competition, that the prices will crash and Nigerians will benefit from it.
So privatization, is it of the Port Harcourt refinery?
All the refineries owned by the NNPCL, they have shown a gross incapacity that they are unable to manage these things. And they are talking about turnaround, maintenance, and all of those things. Someone has built something from ground up, and it's working. Right, so turn it out and give it to business people. Again, there will be profit driven in the first, but again, when there is healthy competition, and then they are able to bring down, just like you saw that at some point, telephony was just in the hands of, I think, Nitel, you remember? Those days where you had to go and do payphone. Again, when private sector operators, MTN, Glo, and the rest came in, you now see that it's a healthy competition. Again, imagine if Nitel was operating our internet and telephony service, where we would be today. Today we are talking about maybe you're making a call and then there's system downtime, but now it really happens. So I think that giving it to a couple of private sector players could help Nigerians derive the maximum benefit from those investments.
If I remember correctly, I think they did try to get into the cell phone business back then. It was MTEL or something like that, or MTEL. I don't remember what it was. They didn't, go beyond 6 months or 1 year at most. I remember back then in the start of the GSM era in Nigeria. But let's also just, get your general reactions to, the declarations made yesterday by the president on Independence Day speech. Certain things that he pointed out as his achievement so far as Nigeria's president and his administration's achievement. Is there any part of it, of that speech that stood out for you, to give you some confidence that it may be tough, but it's tough for the right reasons, and in a very short, while, we will start to reap the benefits and see stability, across our country?
I sincerely believe that Nigeria cannot continue going this way, and that the leaders have no option than to supply. They will not supply because they are good. They will supply because of their own selfish interest, because at some point it will be clear to them that you can't govern a set of hungry, angry, and frustrated people. Right? And it will become clear and obvious to them, and then things will begin to happen. Again, when government has an opportunity, a prime time to communicate, they tend to, and this is a communication lapse, and I've seen it with several governments, not just this government, they tend to tell us what they've done. No, you're not supposed to tell your citizens what you've done, because if you're supplying a bucket load of water as a governance supply, there is an ocean of need. And then you're just taking a bucket and you're asking us to. So again, I think that they should be compassionate and see things from other people's perspectives. You're not supposed to tell Nigerians how they feel about you. If you've done something, they should feel it. Then I think that the better part of that speech should have been used to explain their policies, their problems, and actionable plans that they are taking to make sure that they solve these problems. Then if you're telling Nigerians, for instance, to sacrifice and to go through the pain of all the things that is happening, but the government is not sacrificing. The executive side of things is not sacrificing. Again, you've seen them buying private jets and all of those things. The legislative side is not sacrificing. You've seen them buying SUVs worth several million. So if we see that you're not sacrificing and you're preaching to us to sacrifice, that preachment is going to fall on a deaf ear. And I think that's how I myself, and perhaps many other Nigerians, received that. It's a little bit less presidential, if you ask me, what he said yesterday.
Well, sacrificing shouldn't be one-sided, and I completely agree with you, because that's the one thing that we hear a number of times, those who say that if you're asking Nigerians to hold on and to be patient, that things will get better. Let's see that you also are being patient and you are holding on and not spending excessively. Let's talk about flooding.
Yes.
Flooding worsens despite 180 billion naira spent on dams. Now, experts have talked about cracks being in the dams' wells. They've, in some measure, criticized the government, saying that a number of these could have been avoided if proper maintenance, was done, even with all the integrity tests that have been carried. I decided to, look into the story, and they're saying here that a total sum of 179.77 billion naira was allocated for the construction and rehabilitation of dams across the country over the past 10 years. Yet, the flood keeps getting worse.
It must be said emphatically that what happened in Maiduguri was not a natural disaster. It's not. It's a human and a man-made disaster. Flooding, everybody knows that the rains peak in September and October. And NIMET has been issuing flood alert warnings all the time. The structural tests and integrity tests have been done, and the government knows that this is at risk of collapse. But we're doing, inshallah, praying that it does not happen. So again, you now see that we live in a reckless and irresponsible society where no one has taken responsibility for what happened in Maiduguri. And we have a lot of Maiduguris waiting to happen, because some of the dams holding back these waters are, again, as reported, have shown signs that they may not hold up for the next 5-10 years. Now, after Maiduguri, I see reports, Maiduguri people are trying to rebuild after the flooding. And I say, rebuild what? Rebuild to expose themselves again to that set of things. And there are other cities apart from Maiduguri that are just waiting to be wiped out, and the government is allocating resources, possibly not doing the work. And again, is also the manifestation of that bad governance that we've always talked about.
All right. I think I spoke about this, extensively back then, that, when we have situations like this, we don't see that the government investigates itself, does some introspection, looks at where it may have failed the people. It clearly shows that there's no actual value for the Nigerian life or Nigerian property. And so when you hear that 12 people died as a result of one reason, for one reason or the other, and nobody questions, if the government failed in its responsibility to have protected those lives, if government action, maybe weeks before, months before would have saved those lives, it clearly tells you that those lives don't really matter, and nobody really takes into account the value for the average Nigerian life. But it's where we are. Thank you very much, Chima, for joining us this morning and for sharing your time and your thoughts with us.
Thank you so very much for the amazing work you guys do here at News Central.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope we have you again.
Yeah.